Welcome to Social 3.0, the podcast dedicated to helping you drive growth through content and communities. In this first episode of the first season, we're going to do something a little bit different, where it's me in the hot seat this time, as I get interviewed by Kristen Sesto, founder of B2B influencer agency Custom Influence. We talk about the journey we went on in building Content Cal from a startup in 2016 to getting acquired by Adobe 5 years later, and how we built the business predominantly through organic channels, through our personal brands, through webinars, through social media content, through communities, etc. So we'll deep dive into that now. In future episodes, we'll be diving into all of those topics and more with other marketing leaders in the space. But for now, you'll have to deal with me in the first episode. I really hope you'll find it interesting, and more importantly, I really hope you'll find the future episodes even more interesting, as we've got some fantastic guests lined up. Hope you enjoy.
Do you want to do a little bit of an intro on who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Andy, and the short story is 8 years ago, founded a social media software company called Content Cal. Prior to that, my background was always in sales and marketing, and like any salesperson that hits their target saying, hey, how hard can it be? I reckon I can do this by myself. So I didn't do it by myself. I found someone that had come up with the idea for Content Cal, loved the concept of it. And at that point I thought, you know what? I'm going to get involved. So left the corporate life, joined a startup with another co-founder. So three of us built it. And yeah, in 2021, we were acquired by Adobe after growing across maybe 30,000 plus customers in 140 countries. So the scale was pretty amazing. And and obviously Adobe buying us was like a dream exit.
Yeah.
And the other part from that was I decided to condense everything I'd learned about both of the mistakes and the things that I'd learned around like a playbook. How can you market a business and build a B2B business from scratch, and condense that all into a book I wrote called Social 3.0.
Yeah, I mean, this guy literally wrote the book on B2B social. That's what it's called. So there's a lot to say for that. So I want to do a few quick fire questions around B2B social, B2B marketing. I know you kind of span all social, B2C as well. So it'd be interesting if you have perspectives on those areas to share over. That's cool too.
Yeah.
So however you want to riff, we'll just take it from there. So okay, so first question, first thing on my mind. You do a lot of videos on just social product updates. They're so good. They're so digestible. What is one, I guess, social product update that is really interesting to you right now? And if you could get more specific, because we have a B2B audience, could you go LinkedIn and talk about LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the one that I would go to would be LinkedIn anyway. I love the fact that we now can sponsor any organic content, right?
Yeah, I was having a look at that last night, and it just seems like long form articles with the thought leader ads, which used to be just employees within a company. Now that can be anybody, which is so cool. And I actually saw one in the wild yesterday. I think it was from Cognizant, but people are using them. So yeah, it's super exciting.
Exactly. Cognizant's always in my mind when I think about like how to use LinkedIn really well from a B2B perspective. And they've adopted these, because thought leader ads had been available for a while, right? So, and they had been using that really well, promoting their CMO and CEO, etc. Love it. Absolutely love what they do. And definitely recommend anyone who's watching this to go check out Cognizant. But the other piece now is that we can now start encouraging those people that advocate for us. So now, for example, if rolling back to the Content Cal days, we had people always like singing our praises on LinkedIn, right? Like this is an amazing update, etc. But like now we can sponsor that stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, you ask permission, etc. But that is UGC is what
I was just going to say it's this UGC for B2B,
exactly.
Which like a couple years ago you would have thought, is that going to be a thing for B2B businesses? I think it definitely is. And And I guess with that in LinkedIn in general, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was just the increased engagement rates on LinkedIn. So I think it was Social Insider that produced a report maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe more than that, around just really high year-on-year engagement rates on LinkedIn. I just wanted to know, do you have any thoughts on that? What do you think's driving it? Was it surprising to you or not? Kind of, what's your thoughts on overall LinkedIn engagement?
Good question. Not surprising, given all of the product updates. You might have seen what the head of product at LinkedIn was talking about, like the fact they want this to be a platform of valuable knowledge, right? And so you'll notice, well, everyone would have seen like, the algorithm shifted maybe 3-4 months ago, maybe, and that meant that you suddenly saw a lot more of your connections content in your feed again, specifically related to the subject matters that you're interested in. Right? It's a no-brainer, right? Because naturally. The kind of things that you consume, if you're into social media marketing, then the content about social media marketing, you're going to get served it, right? And it will typically get served to those that that you follow or who follow you. So it's one of the few networks that still, where the social graph still matters. Whereas like on all of the other networks, Insta, TikTok, how many followers you have just doesn't really matter at all. It is literally a vanity metric now on the other platforms. Because all of the algorithms are recommended media based. So you can have one follower or 20,000. If the content's rubbish, it's not going anywhere. If the content's great, it could go viral. And whereas LinkedIn still is about the follower graph. Now, naturally, it means relevancy of our follower graph for sure. But the great thing is that now when we have a very specific point of view on a certain subject matter, and we have followers that care about the thing that we talk about, it's one of the platforms that we truly can get really good engagement in. Now, the double edge to this sword is that it means that reach has gone down.
Yeah, we've seen that as well.
That's interesting, yeah. So I think we're all seeing it for sure. Like, what have you noticed?
And I think, well, the one thing around content discovery and comparing LinkedIn to other platforms is that I think some things with the product will come down the line that will probably, have LinkedIn parody some of those other platforms around content. So I know they got rid of hashtags and searching by hashtags within the platform, but I think something will replace that, whether that's like back-end changes on the algorithm that surface content more intelligently, or they introduce something new. I don't think that they'll kind of forever stick to that social graph only approach. Sure. I just think we're not yet there with what it's going to grow into and what it's going to be. But we have seen a lot of changes, So yeah, there's so much going on with them.
But to answer your question though, that's really that's the genesis of the engagement rate growth, right? Because you're showing relevant stuff to people that have already made a decision to follow you. Naturally, your engagement is going to be high, and it's really encouraging to see they've just passed the 1 billion members mark as well, as you know. So like LinkedIn are both growing their actual reach of the breadth of the platform. And that also means great things because more people come into the platform. It means they're focusing more on the relevant content, finding the right people. So it's just it's one of those places where I'll always recommend people to be on LinkedIn right now because it is actually a much more kind of healthier space where you're not.
Yeah, I don't think people have that fatigue with like so much other like either doom scrolling or just endless scrolling, mindless scrolling. I think when people are on LinkedIn and it's related to their career, something they care about, whether that's the intersection of the career and purpose, it feels like a good place to be. Another thing we say, we're in B2B influencer marketing. I think with B2B, you don't, and professional networks, you're not going to get as many trolls. Like just the nature of the platform is,
you've got your name next to it.
Yeah, you've got your name where you work. You don't really want to be in the comments slating somebody. So I think that's kind of overall makes it a healthier place to be and engage. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there.
Exactly. And they're prioritizing comments so heavily too, right? So you'll grow so much quicker if you engage. And you proactively engage. Same as the way if you engage in these collaborative articles, which we might get onto, which I'm a bit mixed on, to be honest. But, the same way that LinkedIn rewards you for engaging in those with top voice in social media badges, if you want to go after that. But it's been proven that you comment on 3 posts a day, just to have a meaningful comment, and don't try and hack it with AI.
I know.
Everyone can see that.
I know. It's
Just
so
don't.
cringe.
Oh
We've
my
seen
God.
it as well.
Yeah, it's so bad. But like 3 meaningful comments a day will literally 10x your growth. And I think that's the thing that people still can't quite get around in social media. It's like just still a little bit too broadcasty.
Yeah.
This is why like, and B2Bs just fall into this trap all the time. It's like, social media is another channel. Look, we got a campaign. Put it out on social media. Like, no, it's about what our users are saying about it. It's about amplifying the voice of people and about engaging in comments and building communities on LinkedIn. That's the thing that will drive growth.
Yeah, definitely. What else? Yeah, I guess with that, and you've been in social media a long time, across B2B and B2C. Did you see video coming for business or coming for LinkedIn? Was that something that maybe a couple years ago, maybe when you were writing your book or when it came out, is that something you thought about? And are you surprised by the growth? What do you think about video?
Good question. So, video is a very interesting one, especially with LinkedIn, because it's very hard to read because stories came and went. That didn't really happen, it's fair to say. But also there was a timing issue, like doing that in COVID might have not been the optimum time to launch it. And of course, they're already speaking about testing the kind of a more video feed, which to your point, I'd expect the algorithm to be much more kind of recommended media. So I think you make a really good point where even though what I say is like that it's still about social graph today, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it's going to be about next week or even tomorrow.
Yeah.
So video is coming, but the reason I started doing video on LinkedIn 5 years ago is when I started really leaning into it. It's all about attention arbitrage, right? Because you could see LinkedIn's growing quickly, but you also know that only 10%, I think it's even less than that, of LinkedIn profiles actually post.
Yes, I've seen that stat as well. And I do believe it. Like if I talk to most of my friends, like I said, most of my friends probably aren't in my same career profession, but they're on LinkedIn. But they're like, you know, and I'm out here being like, yeah, we started doing video on LinkedIn. And they're like, I'm there. I'm a passive consumer of LinkedIn content, but I'm not doing video. So yeah, I think personally, I'm in two minds of where is it going to go. What do you think?
I still think it's like you can see the engagement rates continue to grow, and it's one of the few platforms that video isn't the most engaging media. It's still multi-image formats.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
And text still works really well.
Everyone loves a long form LinkedIn, and you know that certain format that's it's like makes you want to click on.
Exactly.
And a lot of people have mastered it, a lot of the creators or people that we work with. And before I kind of, got to know some of the creators, I was like, oh, they're just trying to hack it. But now I kind of recognize it as, no, this is just a really great way to share information. So yeah, I mean, I still stay on the LinkedIn long form text.
I love it. And I think this is what I love about LinkedIn. It's not like, oh, you have to conform to a certain format.
Yeah.
Because if videos, you're great on camera. So yeah, why wouldn't you do video? So if you're not so comfortable on camera and you're an executive that's trying to build your brand, then you don't need to be on camera. Yeah. The message is a bit that matters. And I think that's it, message over format on LinkedIn, which I love. And you can't say the same for like TikTok or Reels.
No,
or
you
Insta,
definitely
right?
can't.
It's format. The message is still as important, but there's a bit more parity between if the post is going to work well, you need to think about both about format and also about subject matter. Whereas on LinkedIn, subject matter still is the primary concern.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of professionals too, it just goes down to like so much of the content that we're consuming for our careers. We're looking for knowledge. Yes, it's good to be entertained as well, but, have inspired or have some emotion strike. But ultimately it's around the content and what you're learning from it, how you can do your job better from it.
Correct.
So yeah, I have to agree.
Back to your point, just closing out the point on video, really, it's like the reason I wanted to dive into video, not necessarily, I didn't care whether it's the most engaging or not. One, I know that people would watch it if they're into watching video. I wanted to do it for myself because, it helps you articulate something in a clear way. No one else was doing that, so it was going to be my 10% edge. No one's talking about social media updates in a video format, so that's your kind of 10% edge. And it also paid like dividends as we were building Content Cal, Because when you're an early stage of the business, and for most B2Bs, your company brand will never be as strong as the brand of the people that work within it.
Yeah.
And people knew Content Cal. It sounds narcissistic, but it's not intended to be. People would know Content Cal as me. They would associate it with me, and eyes earn trust, right? So when you feel like you believe someone and you believe what they believe, you can most articulately get that when you activate employees through social media. And I've seen that firsthand. I tell this story quite a lot, but we won our largest ever RFP at Content Cal against the biggest competitor in the space, right? And here we are, a tiny company that's been built in a garage between 3 people. And we're taking on a multinational company worth nearly $1 billion. And we won. I asked the guy who was making the decision, I was like, why did you choose us? And they're like, there's feature parity. There's some things you don't do quite as well, but generally you're kind of a match from a feature set perspective. Yes, there's pricing elements, but the deciding factor is like, we feel like we know you.
Yeah.
We feel like we trust you. And you add value, you as in a business, you, not just me, add value above like just using you as a tool. We come to you for like how we get better at social media, how we do a social media strategy, how we stay up to date. We feel like we will grow as a team and as a business much quicker because we're working with you. And that's all come through content and them consuming us and
just seeing your face, like
Correct.
you said, video, it just feels like I know that person, not in a creepy way, not I actually know them, but that trust, that credibility that comes from video.
100%.
It speaks volumes. It's the rise of, founder-led marketing that so many people, and personal branding, these buzzwords, but have so much meaning behind them for sure.
100%.
I guess moving on from that then, and trust, credibility, I guess we're a B2B influencer agency. Who are you influenced by right now? Is there anybody on LinkedIn or off LinkedIn? Doesn't have to be, in a professional sense. Like who are you watching right now? And Gus, what about them interests you and makes you want to engage?
Good questions. So one on LinkedIn and one, I recommend a newsletter that I read religiously. So one on LinkedIn, you'll likely know him. I'd be very surprised if you didn't. Chris Walker.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
everyone knows Chris Walker. But
in B2B as well. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I'm a pretty boring guy. Like, I'm into B2B marketing. I do B2B marketing, and I follow people. Talk about an echo chamber. But anyway, what I love is just one, his content format, super consistent, great on camera, and relentless.
His setup is good too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if our setup's going to be that good.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. But we're no Chris Walker, but we're trying, right?
Exactly. But even still, it's just has a very clear point of view, right?
Yeah.
And expresses that. I mean, he's been posting about the same thing ever since I followed him, but there's little elements of it that's kind of new and interesting. But the point is, I just nod along with everything that he says because I feel like I'm represented through him.
Yeah.
So that's when having just a real clear point of view on something, and being generic, in which most people are on LinkedIn because they're scared of because
again, these are the pros and cons to professional network. It's it's a happy place to be, but you don't want all of this group think and everything. So when you do find somebody that's opinionated, another person that I really like is Tom Goodwin.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it's he's opinionated. I can't say I agree with everything that he says, but I'm entertained by his point of view. And so that brings a lot of value as well. I think from what I'm getting from what you're saying, and the way that I feel is it's better to have an opinion, and that makes things more interesting, especially in the professional sense,
And it's not a clickbaity opinion. It's just his
point of view.
What I believe.
Someone spent 10, 20, 30 years working in an industry and they know a thing or two about it. And there's so much power in independent voices actually sharing that, especially now in I always think of Gen Z, and them entering the workforce. And, I had loads of training, loads of mentorship and support early on in my career. And with the hybrid work environment and remote work environments for so many companies right now, I have to say, I'm not completely plugged in with loads of younger people, but I do wonder how, where they get information, where they get kind of industry knowledge, wisdom. And it is probably more on social because that human connection, if you're only in the office 2 days a week, it's just not going to be as strong. So yeah, it's just another reason I think why kind of digital word of mouth is really important. Yeah.
Another one actually just thrown to mix, just come to mind. Jeremy Connell-Waite, who's from IBM, amazing storytelling artist, basically. The way that he communicates how he tells story and how to structure a story. If anyone's interested in doing like educational content, that is like a framework. And I've always been super passionate about educational content. Honestly, if I wasn't a marketer, I would like to be a teacher. So it kind of works quite well for me personally, for doing this kind of stuff. And Jeremy Connell-Waite is just so amazingly generous at like everything he's learned, he's sharing. And sometimes in B2B, we worry about that because we think, what we know is our secret sauce. It's like, no, knowing something is one thing, but doing something
is a whole different story. You're so right. You're so right. I guess going on from that and just around like the decisions that are made within B2B companies or just brands as a whole, leadership could have a lot of opinions on, like you said, do we share content? How much do we give away? Another thing, I guess, that we see as, a B2B influencer agency is with new marketing channels, with innovative ideas. Like how do you think, or do you have any tips for convincing leadership to try new things, take risks, invest in kind of uncharted territories? Any advice in that area?
Yeah, this is the question I'm asked the most, right? And I imagine you come up against this in your work all the time, right? Because the reality of all of this goodness that we've spoken about, that you will very rarely see a one-to-one correlation between activity and result. And we're so used to seeing that in marketing. Like we've grown up on a diet of like ads and ROI and all that stuff.
We're a slave to Google's attribution models,
And it's all a lie.
Yeah.
It's all a lie. And we always make decisions. And we've fallen into this trap when we were building Content Cal. We jettisoned so much cash towards like Google ads because like all our site traffic's coming from Google. It's like, no, it's not. It's coming from the podcast. It's coming from the webinars. It's coming from all that stuff. It's just a last click.
Yeah.
Is that Google's getting. So we're like, oh, amazing. We're going to get it. And most of our Google search traffic was all from like, brand terms anyway.
Yeah.
And that brand terms all come through social. So so it took me a while to try and convince people about like, we need to think about brand terms differently because this is where all of our influence is happening. It's happening on social. And it took me truly understanding, because I wasn't like a trained marketer, didn't go to uni or anything. I made this all up as I've gone along. But it took me understanding more about like share of voice versus share of market, And this is like kind of old school marketing type of stuff, but it's still, and you still find this touted on the B2B Marketing Institute on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. But when you truly understand like share of voice versus share of market, I charted this against Hootsuite when we were growing and when I was speaking to other leaders in our business at that time to try and convince people as to why we want to do something like this. Because at that time, Hootsuite probably had 30% market share. I forget the numbers. We maybe had 5%. But then I compared our share of voice and correlated that to, we had HubSpot. So I looked at like how many leads we were getting per month. And you can see a correlation between like how our share of voice was growing over the month and the growth in our leads. Now, is that a true one-to-one ratio? No, it's not. But the fact is you have more people talking about you. You're starting to see a growth in your branded search terms. And then you're starting to see the correlated growth in both your share of voice and the leads that you're starting to track. That gives you a really clear indication and a very nice proof point to say to execs, like, something big is happening. We have a groundswell of activity here. No, it's not going to happen. And all that goodness isn't work of a moment. You just turn it on and it's good to go. This takes blood, sweat, tears and time to make this happen. But it's truly the only way that a business can organically grow. Because if you're reliant on ads and your brand is differentiated by features, you are really in a very, very dangerous place, because the pace of product development, sorry if I'm going off on one, but the pace of product development is only going to get quicker. It's getting cheaper to develop products, it's getting cheaper to bring things to market. There's startups happening all the time, and AI is only going to accelerate all of this stuff. Which means like B2Bs will be disrupted left, right, and center, as will anyone else. And if all you've got in your locker is relying on like Google ads, LinkedIn ads, etc.
Product-led growth.
Product-led growth only works when you've got loads of traffic in your product. And you've got a viral coefficient, right? And like product-led growth sounds great, but like you have to make people care. And the only way of truly making this happen too is like, of course, there's some data points I've just spoken about, but also like I've seen this to best effect when the business either is founded by people that get marketing or have been marketers, or they've got marketing at the top table. Marketing is not a role. Marketing is a mindset, right? And it runs through everything you do. It runs through every single customer interaction. It runs through every piece of a business. Marketing and distribution is your only advantage as a business. Product, features.
I'm so on board with that. It's something like I think back to when I was in business school, like 15 years ago now. And they used to teach like, you've got 2 ways to make your business succeed. You can have economies of scale or you can differentiate. And like that point of differentiation now is just marketing. That is, it's not your features or the USP. It's how you market. I'm so on board with that and agree completely.
Of course, there's exceptions to it, of course. So I just want to like caveat this. There are some like standout businesses that have game changing things. But for 99% of businesses, they're all the same to everyone. It's just a feature set. Distribution and marketing is your advantage. And the closer you can bring marketing to the top table, the more successful you'll be. And in final example to show you this in real life, I've been blown away by the story of this business, the canned water brand called Liquid Death.
Yes, I've seen so many LinkedIn case study ...
So it's going well. There was a really good podcast on this, and didn't even know that it started on a Facebook group without even a product. Just started a movement behind it because, like, no one gives a crap that it's a canned water. They give a crap about the brand, though.
Yeah, and they went hard with influencers. Like, what podcast weren't you watching where if it was visual, where there was a Liquid Death in the background, And again, that's like it's like the rise of branding once again. Like everything is old is new again, and that credibility that can be achieved through kind of thoughtful influencer partnerships, I think, only strengthens. Making a brand memorable, having people, have some emotional connection to it, even if it is just water,
Definitely. And look they started off with that brand, but look what they're doing now, because like on a business side, Mike, the CEO, is now obviously leaning into podcasts and personal branding. Like starting to talk about all of this. So he'll get known in this space too. So, but he came from an agency and.
Yeah. So he's a marketing guy. What else before we close out? Let's see. Just around metrics and measurement, we haven't really talked too much about it. I think, again, drawing on your experience across social platforms, so outside of just LinkedIn, any overall viewpoint on measuring B2B social as a whole? Again, if you have any thoughts on influencer, activity, great. But I'm sure it's something you spent so much time thinking about and developing with Content Cal.
So already covered one of those elements. So there's only 2 ways that I look at metrics, because you can waste so much time on social media metrics. And honestly, it's a waste of time in most instances. There's really 2 ways that I look at it. One, a tactical way, and one more strategic way. We already touched on strategic way, which is like every 3 months, analyze share of voice, look at overall impact, look at every mention of your brand, who are the key people talking about you, that kind of thing. And I don't look at it through a social media lens. I look at it through more of a PR lens, right? Because all we're trying to do is build a media engine for our business.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're trying to do. So we want to look at that and see our influencers as our kind of reporters and as same as our employees. So we want to see how that impact every quarter, see that overall impact. And we would analyze, of course, like your other more quarterly metrics, like how many podcast downloads, our webinars were a kind of key element of what we used to do at Content Cal too. So we'd analyze all of that. along with overall lead growth. And of course, we made it a real point. I haven't called this out earlier, but it's a super important point, is that for all of our sales team, we would hold back commission from them unless they had asked the customer, how did you hear about us? When they say, oh, Google, no, really, how did you hear about us? So only when we had that level of fidelity they would then get paid on that deal. So we went,
I like that.
We went absolutely brutal with like knowing
you got to track
exactly.
dark social. Again, going back to Chris Walker and the importance of all these things and Google's attribution model. It's so important to have that other view and not just the easy numbers that are just data for data's sake, because they can make us feel like numbers that are easy to get can probably make us feel nice inside, but they're not actually drawing real insight. And so, you're right. It's a balance between that more strategic and the tactical numbers you're looking at.
The tactical piece, to your point, is really simple. I just look at like top performing content from just two lenses. One, I look at reach rate, as in
reach rate is so important,
Exactly.
so undervalued. I see a lot of polls like, what do you think the most important social metric is right now? And most people don't even mention reach rate.
No.
They mention reach, but that's not. It doesn't give any context.
Exactly. It's all about context. So if a post is going beyond our follower base, then we know that was good. But then if you look at posts if you imagine this like an overlapping Venn where you've got reach rate and then you've got engagement rate. So if a post both allowed us to extend beyond our existing follower and our social graph that we were talking about earlier, and it also had good depth of engagement, so the people that saw it also engaged with it well, you've then hit that's the holy grail, right? Because we've gone further with it and people clearly liked it because they've engaged with it. That would be, and I just model that for whatever our next week or month's content strategy is going to be based on those posts that index highly on those two metrics.
Yeah, and I have to give a shameless plug here too. Like partnering with influencers can do that. That can solve that problem as well. So it's like if we always say to clients, like, if you want to reach net new audiences or achieve higher engagement within a niche group that you can't kind of cut through to, that's the reason or the thought behind working with somebody that's influential in an industry. So there's ways to do it too. There's ways to do it organic. There's ways to do it with paid. I think influencers kind of a mixture of the two. But overall, you're right. It's that media engine, that PR engine, and keeping it going.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I think we can end there. I really hope this whole thing recorded. We'll see.
Love it.
Oh, thank you so much, Andy.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. And we'll be back next time with some more B2B leaders sharing more of their expertise around how they build brands and how they drive growth through content and community. Be sure to click like and subscribe to help this podcast grow, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.